We have still some few minutes to gather a few questions and comments if there are any, please. You may use the mic, please.
I mean, you said, this region is still not in the mood of cooperative security. They're thinking too much in terms of balance of power.
Please closer to your mouth, otherwise won't.
Yeah, this region is too much still in this mindset of balance of power instead of cooperative security. Historically speaking, if you look at the most successful agreements, whether they are conventional arms control or strategic arms limitations, they're all based on a stable balance of power, which is the precondition to move into cooperative security. And the problem with the conference, the 2012 conference, and I mean even the follow-on, is that this region, and not because of the Arab rebellion, is in upheaval. So the balance of power is shifting, and we don't know in which direction it will go. We have, and this, according to me, is the major problem, we have revisionist powers. You need status quo powers interested in maintaining and keeping the status quo in order to become engaged in such talks and then potentially having results. As long as you have revisionist powers who are not satisfied with the current status quo, I don't see the incentive in moving towards what is cooperative security. Then the whole thing becomes, and now I pick up a remark of Ambassador Stein, becomes a theater play which Samuel Beckett once wrote, Waiting for Godot. He never showed up.
Please, wait.
Yeah, I want one question to Professor Gunay and one question to Camille. To Professor Gunay, I wonder when would Turkey feel that as part of these discussions it should give up on U.S. tactical nuclear weapons on Turkish soil, and which I think are quite relevant for the discussion. But to Camille Grant, I share your premise, and I share your analysis, and I share your conclusions, but now I want to try and collect it with what's happening on the ground. And here are three quick questions. One is, what do we do to do a deconfliction between 2012 and the discussion of the Iranian nuclear file, because there are serious efforts underway to try and link the two? Some voices from Tehran, but also from Ankara on the one hand, and from Egypt, from Cairo on the other. So will it make the discussion of these issues inextricably linked and obviously bring Israel through this in the equation in the back door, and therefore we are deadlocked also diplomatically there? Two, is there any room in your mind for trying to arrest some adverse developments on the arms race in the Middle East in the non-nuclear domain through some of the mechanisms, the process, whatever, whether it's rockets, whether it's fuel cycle technologies, whether it's cyber, you name it, and so on. And third, do you see any possibility that such a process or some developments of the nature could actually help deal with a potential spiral having to do with preparing for a nuclearizing Iran? Because, as you pointed out, the hope that this process would actually create a nuclear weapon-free zone isn't in the cards anytime soon, and there is no solution there for the Iranian issue either. Thank you.
David.
Two questions, one to Shimon, the second one for Camille Grant. Shimon, you say that the main reason probably for the Egyptian, that is a common knowledge, of course, is dismantling Israel from its nuclear capabilities. What do you think about the new agenda or the hidden agenda of the Egyptians about the Iran going nuclear? I mean, 95 it was not on the table. These days it is on the table. So it might be that Egyptians still have the Israeli complex, the nuclear Israeli complex, but still an hidden agenda which is maybe even much more, I would say, practically threatening for the Egyptians is the Iranian case. So this is first question. Second one to Camille. As you mentioned, the resolution was, the NPT resolution was about WMD and not only nuclear. Although most of the discussions, most of the track 1, track 1.5, track 2, these days are dealing with the nuclear, not with the bio, not with the chemical, which gives a sort of impression that it's only mentioning, but really it's not going to be there seriously. And you said, I think, justified that in a right way, that from Israel point of view, introducing the chem and bio is important. But I want to go further and ask you whether, like another track 2 talks that are going on these days, wouldn't it be an idea to test that being the bio, being less, I would say, a problematic for the countries in the region to agree upon, as was approved in this track 2 talks, which decided to start with a bio and not chem and not nuclear, under the assumption that it will be maybe easier to bridge the gaps in the bio because of its because of the implementation and confidence building blocks that can be there and might put the basis for the next, I would say, more complicated issues of mainly nuclear. So what do you think about these possibilities vis-à-vis the 2012? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, David. Maybe we'll stop here and I will gather comments and answers. Professor Gnai will be the first.
Okay. To the first questions of our colleague from Germany, he has mentioned that there were revisions powers, and also if I'm not mistaken, you have mentioned that we need to stick to stable balance of power that will bring up real agreements on the ground, right? Okay. This may sound reasonable due to the revisions powers and their stakes and their demands for becoming nuclear or whatever in future. Today we're mentioning Iran. Tomorrow we don't know whom we will be in this region. But I also believe in that cooperative security measures should be benefited, because by this way you bring a breathing space to get to know your counterparts' feelings of this is a matter of security dilemma, actually. You need to know the other's mindset, which breeds security dilemma, more suspicion and mistrust, and in the end you end up with more armaments and so on and so forth. So in this sense, though it has not become successful, I take this Brazilian-Turkish swap agreement very important in terms of, because it has been a good non-profit. If it was going to be successful, it was going to be a good non-proliferation effort, and also it was a confidence-building measures which proved that Iran was negotiable, and in the end it brought an agreement, though it has not worked due to many reasons. Okay, so this is something that I believe that despite to the revisions powers presents in future today and tomorrow, and despite to the balance of power mindset of this region, we are in need of dealing with the instruments of cooperative security, not only with the old and continuing traditional threats of this region, also we need them with non-traditional transcending new threats of this region, which also is a threat of global world. And for the second question that is being raised for me, what would be the thought of Turkey's stand about tactical nuclear weapons on her soil? Well, Turkey is a member of NATO, and these were the weapons of NATO. And also, it was a decision of NATO that was at the Lisbon conference that they decided to make it stay not only in Turkey, in other countries of NATO members in Europe. But of course, in time, if NATO decides to do away these tactical nuclear weapons, she would, I'm so sure that within permissible conditions, Turkey would be abiding with the decision of NATO. Why am I saying this? During the missile defense issue, there were fierce arguments and debates that came out in Turkey that we should not install these radars in Turkey as part of this NATO decision. But despite to this debates, in the end, we have decided to go along with NATO decision, and now we are part of this missile defense system that has become part of NATO decision. So there is nothing secret about it. Since being a NATO member, we go by with the consensus and with the decisions of NATO. But if NATO itself decides to do away with this weaponry, which is not only on NATO, not only on Turkish soil, of course, we will abide with it in time, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Shimon, show us, you can also speak briefly.
The brief answer to Dudu's question is to do a promotion for Emily Landau and Tamar Mal's publication about a year of arms control, where I had an article covering Egypt between Iran and Israel. So that's the shortest answer. I mean, read it.
I like that.
First of all.
That was
Secondly,
nice.
I think that notwithstanding the fact that time has passed, stripping Israel of its capabilities is a national priority on the Egyptians' agenda for time immemorial, since 1960, as a matter of fact, and Eli Levite and Emily have done also here, promoting the two of them, in a book, have extensively dealt with it. Egypt of Mubarak is different than Egypt post-Mubarak. If we read the WikiLeaks about Mubarak and Iran, we know exactly how he perceived the Iranian nuclearization and the impact on Egyptian national security. Post-Mubarak, we all remember, at least some of us, an interview given by Amr Moussa to Lali Vaimus in the Washington Post, where he was quite clear between the two of them, Iran and Israel. Israel takes a major precedent on the Egyptian agenda. Iran nuclear will trigger, as we say, at least the beginning of actively thinking among key countries in the region, asking themselves, what does it mean for my national security? And I think that there were some Egyptians who said that Israel is an issue for itself as far as Egypt is concerned, but Iran and Israel will put Egypt in a new situation where Egypt will have to seriously consider what steps does Egypt takes, not only security-wise, but also in terms of what is extremely important for Egypt, and that is the leadership in the Arab and beyond world. So everything will have an implication. As I said, Israel is an issue in and of itself, and the implication of Iran as far as Egypt remains to be seen.
Thank you, Shimon. Camille, you are the last one. Remember, you are also the last period between us and the lunch hour.
That's a clear message. So I'll really use bullet points to answer the questions. The deconfliction with the Iranian nuclear file. It's a very difficult issue because obviously the issues are connected somehow. I mean, if there was not a nuclear file, probably this negotiation would be easier. And on the other hand, the attempt of the Iranians in particular to establish a parallel between the Israeli alleged nuclear capability and their own program is not acceptable and is completely unfair from even an NPT perspective. And this is something we need to remember to some of our partners in the NPT quite often, because they tend to do that. One way of addressing that is managing dates. Obviously, the conference is unlikely to take place in the early weeks or months of 2012. So somehow the conference is likely to be moved to late 2012 and possibly beyond. I think I'm not involved in this directly, so as far as I'm concerned, I would say that any time before 2015 is good. Somehow, because let's not do fetishism with dates. I wouldn't go as far as to say that we should take 2012 in the Islamic calendar, but we can move it. Is there room to address the non-nuclear arms race? Probably as part of the confidence-building measure. The discussion, many of the conventional dimensions should be addressed. I wouldn't suggest to add cyber. That's making it far too complicated unless you really want to make this completely inextricable. For that. Your question about the potential spiral. I think it's the key issue where the Middle East WMD-Free zone becomes very interesting, including from a security perspective. The concern I have is that a nuclear Iran will trigger decisions to go nuclear on the part of several countries in the region, either to open the option or to cross the threshold. And this is where any additional barriers to that are useful. And here I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey. I mean, in all these countries, the debates exist. And if we add another layer of commitments through a regional process of confidence-building measures, we might prevent that from happening. Lastly, on the issue of BW, I agree it could be tackled. And honestly, I mean, to have been a diplomat, it's always a bit embarrassing when you're sitting in a BTWC conference to see the Syrian and the Israeli delegates sitting side by side as observers at the back of the room, and you feel that probably on this particular issue things could be done in terms of achieving an incremental step, which would be to sign up for a treaty that, by the way, is not verified anyway. So that it doesn't have the problems of the CTBT in terms of potential involvement, or the CWC in terms of requests to enter facilities and things like that. So I think amongst steps, it would be a good step to see on that, and maybe there could be steps that could be taken jointly by countries in the region to demonstrate that there is some willingness to show that. I was quoting the Code of Conduct about missiles as another example. So again, my point here is to say that short of the zone per se, of joining the NPT, there are plenty of small steps that could be taken that could be very much demonstrating goodwill with some security benefits, limited, I agree, but some security benefits, and that should not be completely set aside or kept as bargaining chips forever, because in a way, I'm quite sure that there's no reasons for Israel to suggest that there is a hidden bio program somewhere by not being part of the BTWC, for instance. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. I want to thank our three speakers for their presentations and comments. I want to thank the audience for its patience. You are invited all to lunch outside, and we shall meet again in this room at 2:30. Thank you very much.